Welcome to the Urban Farmer Rewind. In each episode, I'll be joined by a farmer or guest to talk about what we heard on this week's episode of the Urban Farmer. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Now, let's jump right into it. It's the Urban Farmer Rewind. Week 5 is in the books. This is March. I think we recorded this back in 2015. It's the opposite season of you. You're going from your summer into winter. We're recording this episode in February of 2025, just to timestamp it. So if you're market gardening here and you're anywhere, Curtis was at the 49th parallel we were just talking about, you're starting to get prepped. Think about the season that's upcoming. Farmers have, in our case, day lengths are going to be increasing. Temperatures are going to be increasing. Soil's going to be warming up. And there's a lot of strategies that I've learned about, we've all learned about in the last 10 years, or not just the last 10 years, but to try and deal with this shoulder season where it goes from cooler to warmer. So if we go back 6 months into your setting, and we're not talking about anything in a high tunnel, when you look at field crops and you're transitioning from winter to spring and you want to coax something along, air temperatures are a little cooler, you don't have all the day length, soil's low. Do you do any strategies right now to do what Curtis is doing in this episode to try and warm things up, to speed up germination and accelerate growth in that first shoulder season?
So our climate is 4 seasons in one day. So what happened last year will be different this year, which makes me an adaptable farmer with 39.5 longitude. Latitude, thank you. So that's a big thing to consider. You know, when I worked in Quebec, I couldn't, for the first time, I couldn't believe, knowing they have, so much snow and hard winters, how they could have aubergines pretty much outdoors in summer. I was just like, whoa. So the higher your latitude, I guess the radical difference is faster. Ours is long and slower. So this is what we're doing. We don't know when the soil is going to warm up based on the weather. It could be sunny for a month, or we don't see the sun for a month. I'm using the tarps if the sun is out to warm the soil. But I just have a thermometer in the outdoor garden beds, and I'm looking for a rise to 12 Celsius. Sorry, I don't know that Fahrenheit. We could get that anywhere within a 10-week window. Last few seasons, it's come early. So I'm like, first succession's out. But if it's still down at 9 Celsius, we know it's not time to, especially for direct seeding, to get those crops in. And so yeah, tarping can warm the soil if we have sun, and we can get the first successions in a bit quicker. So for us, it could be August or it could be October. It's like a 90-day window.
And what are the traditional able to germinate in cold soil crops? I'm thinking a lot of the brassicas, mustards, tatsoi, that can handle colder soil and still come up, right?
Yeah, we're doing those year round. So we won't start with, we direct seed the whole allium, the whole onion family, spring onions, carrots, crops like that. We're just waiting for those conditions, which we don't know where it will be. And you can look at big trends, like they haven't announced it yet. We're peak summer, but we're in La Nina, which is a complete reverse of El Nino. So our whole summer, we're in the driest spell we have in 14 years. Well, and the East Coast is wet. It's usually reverse. So the big patterns are the ocean drives our climate.
Yeah, we have the La Nina here now, and we've been really dry. I mean, the good thing is, in the last decade, there's been a lot of new tech and increased education about how to use prior existing tech, because you can manipulate conditions a lot more than you think. I think for a new grower, when I would have started doing the podcast, I was probably of the mindset, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. If it's warm in March and you want to put some crop out and it can take, great. If it's cold, then you just got to wait it out. And I know Curtis talked about that in a lot of the episodes of people in his town would always be surprised that he's growing certain things in the middle of winter because they were beholden to first frost date, last frost date time frames. But with the use of tarps now,
Mm.
shade cloth, frost blanket, clear poly, any sort of low tunnel, portable tunnel type situation, caterpillar tunnels have became pretty much a given now on most farms in the US. Like when Curtis started, I don't even know if the caterpillar tunnel was invented. I'm sure it was,
Mm.
but Farmer's Friend wasn't selling them, and you probably had to like custom make them with pipe benders and things like that. They just weren't as ubiquitous as they are now. So I think you've seen in the last 10 years a lot of farmers IQs and knowledge base has really gone up with being able to do this strategic short-term manipulation of specific areas of the farm. So this isn't a high tunnel that's permanent and we can always control the temperature in there within reason. It's, hey, I need this bed to be a little warmer now. You have a toolkit of stuff and knowledge to try and make that happen, whether that's throwing a tarp on it like you did, let the sun hit it, the black absorbs the heat, warms the soil, raises it up, raises that temperature up. You can throw it hoops over it, put clear poly on it, heat that underneath. And that all boils down to, why would you even want to do that? You're trying to get things to germinate and grow maybe even a little quicker than they normally would at that given time of year. So you can get that cash flow flywheel going, because in the spring, if you didn't overwinter anything, there's no income coming into the farm, assuming you don't grow microgreens. So the sooner you can get field crops up to size and harvested, the sooner you can get cash coming in at the time of year when you're most starved of cash. That's why these techniques are so important.
Mm. Yep. Yeah, totally with you. And I think so we want to talk about high tunnels too much, but generically outdoors, let's just say a baby leaf salad or a coriander. If it's like a perishable salad, we are 30% quicker if it's grown in a high tunnel as opposed to outdoors, say with an insect net. And so these numbers are good ones to measure. So in your climate context, what is the difference in your days to maturity as opposed to being just straight outdoors or under a little plastic cloche? You can definitely, it might not be 30%, but it's significant. And I think the other thing that we are having is, or seeing is, if it's undercover, not only is it quicker, but you've got higher quality and higher yield.
Right. So it's less wind, less potential insects on it, can be cleaner because you're not getting splashed back off the soil. So a lot of advantage there. You're also less variability in temperature, so the plant can just focus on growing, not surviving. And I think when you're a grower, this is really important. So if you're new, you probably view it as, okay, this is confusing and stuff's expensive, whether it's a high tunnel down to quick hoops like we have, to just even putting a roll of frost fabric over the crop itself. There's money outlay.
Yep.
So the part of your experience, I think, learning to grow is there's always a cost trade-off. Is it worth it for me to invest in some sort of tool to move this faster?
Mm.
If it's worth it to you because you get either a better quality crop or a sooner crop, or let's say you just save the crop in the case of extreme wind, hail,
Yep.
uh,
Mm.
insect damage, then it could be worth it. Where it's, all right, I'll invest in a $100 roll of fabric that I could reuse multiple times. But when I do that, I get that 30% quicker rate of return. So instead of having something, I don't know, this isn't the true numbers, but it'd be like, hey, it's ready in 20 days versus 30 days. Well, 10 days matter because now you're selling it 10 days sooner. And that's 10 days cash comes into the business earlier. That's also when you compress time frames of how long DTMs are, that means you can grow more crops per year in the same bed. So you're in and out of that same bed more, which means I'm not only just selling one crop quicker, I'm selling more crops total over a given year. And that's when all of this season extension equipment really potentially pans out for crops. And it may take a year or two for somebody to see the need for this or just decide, hey, this isn't for me. I just grow in the warmer months for my climate. And there's a lot of growers who do that. But that's why there is all this fuss around high tunnels and cat tunnels and quick hoops and all these other things. They're not just out there to look fun and protect things. It's you're trying to see a real rate of return on the time investment and money investment to put these things in place. And, that's huge for you if you're talking growing undercover versus not. I mean, even if it's 20%, 20% is still a lot quicker than 0% faster. So it's worth it for you. I mean, are there any crops you permanently, regardless? I'm talking field crops, not in a high tunnel. Is there anything you permanently keep under some sort of fabric? Meaning if you're growing it all year round, there's always something over it.
It would always be a baby leaf salad. So that, could be baby kale, rocket arugula, baby mizuna. Yeah, always. And I think um, we consider, spoken a bit about, I think the future of small scale is farming with covers with what the climate's doing to us. I consider, like, we use a lot of insect nets on the hoops, but that softens the rain. It's good for the wind. Insects is um, not the priority, but it is, um, it's really crop insurance for us. We've had people through the farm where I've said really rough weather all week. We wouldn't have crops to show you today if it wasn't for the covers. So again, as context, our climate is 4 seasons on a day. 60k winds, 2.3 meters of rain. We don't know when that's coming. We can't simply put a big row cover over a field of salad. The crops under it, with the rain, the wind, the crops underneath just get wrecked. But I see growers in a, let's say, Mediterranean climate that can do that. I'm like, oh, if only we could, cover a whole field block with 4 sandbags and 1 cover. Super nice.
Yeah, I was talking to Ray Tyler, and that's something I think he was doing. He's stretching like one huge, massive piece of frost blanket over the same thing. Yeah, like a whole bed block. And yeah, that's absolutely amazing if you can do that because you're moving one piece of fabric to cover a bunch of stuff. And that's the trade-off with small scale stuff. You're touching it more. So a high tunnel might have, I don't know, 12 rows in it, or 12 beds, sorry, in it, or 10 beds, however big it is, or 30 beds. A lot of poly low tunnels like Curtis talked about in this episode, they covered 2. Our quick hoops cover 1. Other things on the market cover 1. So if you want to cover 12 compared to a high tunnel that covers 12, well, you build 1 high tunnel, you cover 12 beds. You're on a more portable system. You're setting up 12 sets of tunnels and moving those around. So that's the one trade-off of smaller is you're adding labor to this, but that can be good in a way because you're portable, you're temporary, you don't need necessarily need it always in one spot, so you can take it down, and you don't have the capital costs. So that's the financial context to all of this too. I don't think there's a right solution other than, yeah, if we all had millions of dollars, everybody would build one massive high tunnel over their whole farm and call it a day. But we don't. So then it's a blend of What are the problems I'm facing that I'm trying to solve? What's the growing effect I'm trying to get? What's the amount of labor I have? What's the financial capital I have? And are there any other environmental factors that might dictate a decision, or land-based things? Like if you don't have permanent custody of the land, you probably don't want to build a high tunnel. So you
Mm.
gotta kind of like dump all these things into your brain and say, well, what comes out? It's a poly low tunnel or a low tunnel, which I can buy or make DIY. I can go up to a cat tunnel, semi-portable, semi-permanent, or I can go to a high tunnel, which is permanent. And I don't think you have any cat tunnels. You have your high tunnel, you have the quick hoops or red pack cloches over there that you use. Would you ever see, if you didn't have the wind, would you use cat tunnels if you could get them economically priced?
Absolutely, absolutely. Cat tunnels. I mean, you can see, people rave about them for sure. Activists in Australia are really big on them. I know Jean-Martin Fortier is out. Ray Tyler's all his production is undercover now. Yes, and I think the thing is, it's a much lower capital investment and it's portable. If we're on leased land like Curtis was, I mean, he was on 5 other people's backyards. That's pretty significant to be able to make an income off 5 people's backyards. I think that's the legacy that he's left. And yeah, I'm not going to put up anything permanent. We have leases with sheep. Um, Later on, if the farm grows and we need to do some more storage crops on the neighbor's place, everything's going to be portable. I would just be doing like carrots need new ground, carrots at the neighbors. Take my irrigation, sue me. That's portable, and lift the carrots and bring them home. I'm not going to buy more land, and definitely not going to build anything that I can't remove easily. So that's where the cloches come in. Prior to our high tunnel, pretty much farming outdoors, we would have about 40% of our area covered. So 130 beds at that point. We would have, 50 beds under cover. So the more portable it is and the quicker you can get them up and down, it's I would have preferred to have the high tunnel, but it wasn't a thing. We were just in that position. We have to be using cloches and hoops, and yeah, it worked. We doubled our income, we doubled our sales since COVID. Pretty much outdoors, no more land.
I mean, this is really how you start a lot of businesses. Somebody starts with a hot dog stand. They're selling hot dogs off of that. Then they move up to maybe a food truck, and then you move into a full restaurant space. You de-risk along the way. You build your business model. You build your skills. You prove that there's a demand for it. Where you try and start with a restaurant in a brick and mortar right off the bat, I mean, instantly that much more stress, that much more costs, all of that. So yes, I've heard growers say this and maybe agree. You buy the biggest tunnel that you can afford.
Mm.
And if that's the case, then sure, go ahead and do that. I just know a lot of people farming when they start out, they don't have a lot of disposable income because they're starting it on the side. So they're using some form of savings or siphoning off some family income to do this, put some strain on families. So you're often doing it with the most inexpensive technology possible to start with and the minimum viable amount of tech to start with. So that crosses, assuming you can't get funding in the States, you can get government funding to put in high tunnels. Let's assume you can't get that. In order to drop 10, 15, $20,000 or more on a high tunnel right out of the gate, I mean, you have to sell a lot of crops your first few years just to pay that single high tunnel back, and that's not accounting for any of the other expenses you have. So that's the labor trade-off, right? Early on is I'll go to something smaller, whether I make it myself out of EMT or PVC or 9-gauge wire and or I buy something off the shelf, they're all going to require me less money out, but more time to manage. And I think that was a theme in a lot of the urban farmer things too, of if you can buy solutions or you can work for solutions. And they're usually one eliminates the other. If I do a lot of work, I can get my cost down to next to nothing, but I have to do all the work in addition to everything else I have to do. Or I can just buy a solution, low work, but it takes money. And I can use that time that I save by buying to go do something else. Not to say you need to buy everything, but I don't know that you can DIY everything either. And you've probably seen that over the years of somebody who wants to make every little last thing for their farm.
Yeah, I've had, I've seen people make a greens harvester, make a tilther. It's like the R&D's done. You know, if this is the appropriate tool for you, you know, the question is when. When is it relevant? You can't. Maybe you can reinvent the wheel, but yeah, not really. So the what I and same with the high tunnel. You know, I never. We had a 90 square meter high tunnel. That was our limitation. I never anticipated what the new high tunnels would do for us, and you know, that's hindsight. But just to recap on what you just said, we made it work with what we had. Moving cloches around the farm. A cat tunnel would have been a really nice fit for us if it wasn't for the wind. The cloches were what allowed us to be more consistent with our harvest and stocking our retail spaces on, you know, during the winter or any time we had weather coming to challenge us as well. And super portable, really low capital investment. There's no perfect. The farm will never reach finished. You have to work. You just have to work with what you've got. And I think it was 2016. I worked at Curtis's farm, and I know he had a greenhouse on one lease, and he had his low tunnels on that as well. Here's the thing with the low tunnel. Every low tunnel it's not the work of a high tunnel, but every low tunnel needs management. If the sun's out, it got to be opened. We're going to cook your early season lettuce and then closed, irrigated, perhaps drip underneath. So it's management intensive, but capital, the risk, those investments aren't there. Looking at my farm where we currently are, and you know, some of our podcasts are 3 years old. Looking back now, the farm's in a very different position. If I had our high tunnel earlier, we wouldn't have as much outdoor production. We just wouldn't need it. It's that productive for us. We would love to be able to just put plastic on the low tunnels and on the cloches. So this is in one of our old podcasts, but that in the early days, I had something like 35 cloches up with plastic on it, which has a wind load. Beautiful successions of winter lettuce underneath there, and we lost it all in 10 minutes, no matter how, you know, this is like a 60-mile wind. That crisis is where we leaned on the quicker direct seeded crops and just out of necessity created the mix, which is now our business model. If we were in that scenario and had insect net on, our crops would have taken longer, but we still would have had them. And so I guess that's what I like about the quick hoops is you can switch out from bird netting to plastic to frost cloth to shade net. So if I could go back to that day that wind came, I would just take all the plastic off my cloches, switch it to insect netting, knowing the crops are going to slow a little, but we're not going to lose them. And then after the wind, put the plastic back on.
And wind is by far the most common question we get around low tunnels, specifically quick hoops, the ones we sell. It's, hey, I'm in a windy location. What do I do? And I've talked to Red Path a lot about this. They've been making them in New Zealand for 25 plus years. So they have a lot of R&D, and you guys get really windy being so close to the ocean there. And this, I think this theory isn't unique to just what we're selling. It would go for a DIY solution or some other form of low tunnel. One, it's above a certain wind. Doesn't matter what your low tunnel's made out of. Titanium could be made by NASA is going down. Like they're just
Yeah.
not meant for permanent or high wind loads. You have to go
Yeah.
up to even a cat tunnel where that would be dangerous at a certain wind load versus high tunnels. And even high tunnels here are probably very different than the one you have, which I know Redpath makes a lot of those that are meant to withstand high wind loads. So one, it's just above a certain thing, nature's going to win. Doesn't matter how beefy the hoop is, not going to hold up. Then it's things like the cover. What's the cover on it? Is it permeable? Is it not? Can you keep the wind from getting under the cover? Because if it gets under, now you essentially are just catching the wind and almost have a sail. How you can close up the hoops, move them a little tighter together to stiffen it up, because then it can at least brace against the wind a little better. And I think that's one thing that's been people really like about the quick hoops compared to other tunnel systems is that the hoop itself is beefier and more resilient to forces on it than some other things. Now, that's not, again, not to say that it'll withstand any wind load, but it will hold up to more than a skinnier system. And then it's just things like, yeah, like you said, being aware of your context. If you know a big wind is coming in, your best bet is probably just to rip the cover off and let the wind hit the crop and just take your chances versus leaving the cover up for something it's not suited to. And now you lose the hoops, the fabric, and the crop. So there's some risk mitigation that's going to come with experience. I wish there was like some permanent solution that would be amazing in high wind conditions, but be way too expensive to sell. So yeah, I mean, when you think about your local conditions, this also helps you decide what you're going to use for a solution. And if a solution's worth it, if it's so windy that the wind is really a stressor, I wonder if it's better just to say, we'll just take our chances with the plants. We can't afford a high tunnel, but a low tunnel's not going to hold up in our wind conditions. And if I put a low tunnel up, I'm going to stress about it all the time. I might as well just not get the low tunnel. And if the plants make it, they make it. Uh, those are the types of thoughts I think people have to run through before they commit to a solution. And then just look at the skin or the coating on the tunnel itself. A poly, obviously not wind permeable, that holds in heat. You've mentioned it, it requires venting. So you're going to get a warming effect on the soil, really good insulative value, but you're going to have to vent it if it gets hot. Insect netting, obviously you get insect protection off of it, but you also get that some little bit of shade factor happening there, and you'll get any diffusion of rain. So it's going to soften rain hitting it, and you're going to get some wind buffering, I'll call it. It's not wind protection, but it's gonna slow things down a little bit.
Yep. So what we've learned when the big dry winds come is to remove tarps. We can't keep a tarp down even if we put all the concrete in the world on it. Remove tarps and then harvest what's ready. Let's say a 60-mile dry wind is coming. And then all of your next successions that are germinated, maybe at cotyledon stage, because there's no surface area on them, what we've seen is that they're fine. So really bad weather's coming, possibly drill a couple of successions of baby leaf, knowing that we're going to have more crops coming on soon. Your younger successions, should ride it out. We'd make a call. Are we going to leave the insect nets on? The crops that we're germinating underneath shade cloth, what I've learned is to actually take the shade cloth off during the big wind. Definitely keep it on during the big rains, and just restart on the other side of it. But just to recap, if you haven't got surface area, you won't have the wind burn or as much damage on it. And if it's summer, those crops are quicker anyway. It's not going to be long till you've got another succession.
Makes sense. The wind just goes right around them. And your main reason of using insect netting isn't necessarily insect protection, right? It's for just
it's
knocking the rain down.
Yeah, it's weather. So that's our crop insurance covers. Sure, and even hail. Just an insect net, fine for hail. Insect net doesn't do anything for frost. We're hard to get frost, but yeah, it's we could get torrential rain at any time. So with the weather being reversed this year, we're in we're having like a Mediterranean climate summer, but the east coast is just getting mashed up. Wind and rain, just the same. The lows are coming down and just hammering the east coast. It's been a really tough season for the east coast growers.
If we go back in time before you started using any sort of low tunnel or crop protection, too much rain on a crop, what did you see?
Lettuce, Selenova, lots of soil up in it, lots of rot from underneath. And in the earlier days, we had more insect pressure on the direct-seeded baby leaf, Rocket Mizuna. And it depends how much rain you're getting. We had one peak summer, we had 0.5 meter in 36 hours. There's not much mature salad that can take that. Yeah. I mean, if the humans are staying inside because of the weather, salads doesn't have a lot of chance.
Yeah, so just by putting a little bit over it, you're able to soften the rain. Do you find the insect net shuns a lot of the rain? Do you see it running off the side?
No. Yeah, but in the same context, if we tried using, it took us a while to find the insect net back in the day. So we're like, oh, let's put frost cloth up. We don't have frost. The rain performed. It was really different using those frost cloth covers. The rain wouldn't go in evenly. Even though we put them up tight, it would pull at one point. We'd have a really wet spot underneath. We get rot there and stuff. If you're getting frost, you're not getting the heavy rains. So I guess the same thing as saying, you can switch out covers. If birds are being a massive problem, you could put bird netting on a cloche.
Yeah, and just seeing more people over here now start to use shade net in the summer to keep greens sweeter, less bolting, just healthier, cut down the temperature. So 30% shade cloth goes a long way over a lot of these crops in the heat of summer. Plenty of light. They're not going to struggle for lack of light under a lower shade factor like that. But that's been something we've definitely seen people adopting more and more of is not just protecting from the common things like you think frost, wind, rain. It's I'm going to start protecting from the sun too and getting these crops under shade.
Yeah, and hail. We had hail's very isolated here. We had probably the biggest hail we've had one winter. I just went undercover at the wash and pack and watched it come over. And at that point, everything was covered. All our cloches had insect net on. All our direct seeded crops had shade net on the ground. We had tarps down. It was short and brief, but heavy. Yeah, no damage. If we didn't have any covers out, it definitely would have been different.
Yeah, so cover. I like what you said earlier. Management intensive, capital light. Not that they cost money, but they're not the cost of high tunnels. but you're trading it off in management and not just setting them up, but as you said, it's little things, having to touch the fabrics once in a while to retighten them. It's things like venting as needed. If you got to go under there and harvest or do something under, you got to, lift it up or take it down, move it around, store it, all that type of stuff. But if it's the right context for you, stage of farming, experience level, the amount of money you have to invest, you might not need a whole huge solution. You just, I need to spot cover a few beds a few times a year. Bam, there you go.
Mm.
You're switching it up. One of the other things I wanted to hit on here and get your experience as somebody who's grown for a while, and this a little bit came up about growing new crops. If you were flipping through whatever seed catalog you get in that part of the world and you saw something you currently don't grow, what in the grower nerd in you is like, whoa, I'd like to grow that. What's the process that goes through your head to say, is this worth experimenting on the farm? Do I think I can sell it? Um, I'm trying to think of what it would be because I mean, you grow all the common stuff, but say you don't grow kohlrabi, right?
No.
Okay,
No.
kohlrabi. You see it, you fall in love with it. How would you start to dip your toe in the water from a business standpoint with kohlrabi?
Even if it was, any other example as well. I don't know. I got asked last winter. They were, my crew I was with. They were like, "Are you getting excited about spring and the catalogs and tomatoes?" And it's like, maybe I'm getting old, but I was like, nah. Our production's year round. You know. Um, what's the word I'm looking for? When you're just like, the endorphins kick in, and like it's spring, we can come out of the cave, and that we're year-round productions. It's probably context. So kohlrabi, I would with that we've got a conservative sales stream. We're in a isolated city out west. I would be looking at just doing small tests first. So we're doing the same this year for eggplants. Like, just do a small test, grow it for ourselves. Maybe you've got test the market. Just put some into sales and see what happens, and then get some. You got to work out what variety, how you plant it, how far apart. Look at your yields, the value that comes off it, and then and test the market to see if it sells. So new crops over the last few years for us: dill. Over the last 4 years, beetroot, and the last 2 years with the new greenhouse, spinach. Neither of those are significant sales. So I guess it comes back to your business model. Like, does it work for us to diversify now? And testing a crop, potentially, you might sell everything you grow. So we might just drill or transplant half a bed. And then just because your market streams don't jump on it straight away, I'd say 80-20 here. Like, they should jump on it straight away. But if they don't, it's worth testing the market again, and so on. And then maybe doing some education with it, doing some social media. This is kohlrabi. This is the season. This is what you can do with it. This is how you cook it. Tokyo turnips is a classic one here. They tick all the boxes, fast and so on. But we're in a dairy farming region, so a lot of the older farmers back in the day were raised eating cow turnips. And so when you just say the word turnip, and you just say, like, whereas at the farmers market, we would have mums come in and buy a bunch of turnips, and the kids would just eat them raw. Like, they love them. So I guess things change over time. Don't count the eggs before they hatch.
Well, let me ask you on this. So do you think or have you ever felt that your skews in the market are getting stale from an excitement standpoint? Like, is there pressure to refresh and bring something different or new?
No. No. And here's an interesting comment. I've been thinking about this one recently. I'm off to run an event in Southland soon. Our salad mix is never the same. You won't see from week to week a salad that looks the same. Now, it's always got lettuce, mizuna, microgreens, and usually pea shoots. But so across those crops, we've got six different crops. You know, red green lettuce, red green mizuna, red green micros, and green pea shoots. It's the mix and the variation of the volumes and the colors in there that is our creative license. And so I've got this analogy like you only need 6 numbers to win lottery. Good luck with that. Good luck with seeing a rabbit cum salad that looks the same ever again. And I just think salad is, I don't know if I'm going off track here, but we did a podcast years back, and I get asked this now and then, and I think people are leaning towards microgreens, which we mix in the salad. The question I get is, aren't you worried that salad's going to go out of fashion? And I was kind of like, it doesn't matter if you're just on the keto diet or vegan, every meal should have a salad on it. My response was, salad's been around longer than fashion. It's not going nowhere. So no, our product always looks different, but people are super excited about it.
I think a lot of the crops that are known by 99% of the population will never go out of phase unless there's some scientific finding, right, that just totally turns public opinion. So the stuff tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, those are probably the big ones. Strawberries, right? Any sort of blackberry, raspberry, those carrots, onions, right? You know, like there's always a market for those. I think the bonus for salad is you don't cook it. There's no prep. So it's easy. It fits into lifestyles. Kale, I know even when we were recording the original episodes of The Urban Farmer, that had launched and was starting to dip out. Because, I mean, dinosaur kale, not many people want to just eat a leaf of dinosaur kale and just chomp it down. It's bitter. I get it's healthy. I get why people eat it, but most people aren't. Salad, most people are going to do it. You go to a restaurant, you're going to find salads now till forever. So, yeah, I see that. So that no pressure to introduce something new is interesting because there probably is a lot of, and this goes for myself. It's like, when is your business good enough as is? There's this constant perceived pressure to innovate, do something new, stay ahead, keep it fresh, because you see companies like over here, McDonald's and Starbucks and whoever, constantly introducing new foods, new drinks, and cup companies like Stanley and Yeti, new colors and slightly new designs, just bombarding customers with, hey, here's something new, here's something new. But for classics of food that are just staples, it's like sourdough bread, right? I mean, you can mix in other stuff, but at the end of the day, it's still sourdough bread, and people are going to buy sourdough bread for the next 500 years. So, yeah, I wonder, is there that pressure to just be okay with what you have? Do you get bored though? Is there a part of you on the growing side that is just like, if you only had, I don't know, let's say you just had 10 crops, would you get bored just growing the same 10 crops over and over and over? Or could you just experiment on the side for yourself?
We're always testing new crops, small trials. I don't get bored. My day's so diverse, you know, the different tasks, especially if I look back to day one, stepping into farming, strawberry picking 6 days a week, 6 months. I got asked this question a couple of weeks ago. What's your favorite thing to do on the farm on a day? I was like, geez, I enjoy all of the tasks, but I was like, I can't decide if I like harvesting more than direct seeding, or at the end of it, I realized the thing I love the most on the farm is working with my family. all the time I've spent, with my kids. My wife's here full time now. My folks come out once a week. You never get that time back. So no, I don't get bored. I love it.
I guess the thing is, now thinking about that after I asked it and just hearing you, I can seek out excitement outside of work, right? Let me be bored at work. And if I need excitement in my life, I don't need to add excitement to the workday where stuff can go wrong. Mistakes are more expensive. Let's just get through the workday smoothly, profitably, efficiently. Nobody gets hurt. And then we can spice up life outside of work and get our excitement there.
Mm.
Because that's the whole push, right? You start growing something new. You hit on it. You talked about dill and aubergine or eggplant. You got to first figure out how to grow it. And then where's the optimum? And then everything that goes with it. There's a lot of load. I worked for a company once and they talked about you could always launch new products, but there's a cost to that. You have to, in this case, it was like stuff selling online. You had to create, a product page for it and all the description and take the photos and price it and figure out how to source it and how do you pack it and we have to order it and where's it go in the warehouse and all this. There's all these steps that nobody thinks of. You think, well, oh, can I sell eggplant? You're answering one question out of 100 questions you need to answer in order to grow it. Because if you can sell it, that's fine. But then it's just, can you grow it? Can you grow it well? How are you going to harvest it? When are you harvesting it? How does it fit into your harvest routine? Do you have the bandwidth to take on another crop? Is there supporting maintenance when you're growing it? Is there specific care and pest protection requirements? When you harvest it, does it have to go into a cold storeroom? Do you have the bins? Do you have room in your cold storeroom? If not, what's getting kicked out? When you go to the market, is there room on your market stall? Does your customer want it? How many units go into a package? Where do you price it? What's our cost on it? I mean, there's so many questions that wow, that's awesome, I want to grow it whim that a lot of people do doesn't consider any of that. And all those things can be massive headaches by just simply planting 100 feet of something you should have never planted in the first place.
So we're still doing dill because, I didn't know much. I hadn't used it in my diet much before, and I got told it's great with fish, and I was like, oh, well, we supply an independent fishery. Maybe it could be game on for dill. It's so cilantro, coriander is year round for us. Dill not so much. We grow it the same, direct seed it, bunch it the same. It's selling. Restaurants ordering some. It'd be, and I've got a comment coming back to Curtis's work. It'd be a quarter of the sales of coriander, and we'd only got it half the year. Coriander we've got year round. Beautiful shelf life on it. Beautiful crop. So we're selling some, and so I guess coming back to your comment, catalog and getting excited, and if we look at Curtis's eight seasons, he was still doing transplanted kale on weed mat when I was there, 2016. He was still doing paddy pan squash, which is like probably this is my last season. But the following season, kale was gone, and I'm pretty sure in his last season he dropped cherry tomatoes. And you can see a similar journey with Ben Hartman. Less crops in his portfolio, less tools on the farm, and so we're still open to new crops. And you watch, you look around the world and you see what the popular crops are. We were really excited about spinach, knowing carrots for us is our biggest, outside of salad, carrot is the biggest crop we do, and the sales are, we sell every carrot we sell. So we were like, could spinach be the new carrot? And we were doing, in retail, 30 bags a week across multiple stores, maybe 45. So the thing is, how do you need that income? Do you have the time? Can you manage that diversity, or is it just like we're happy doing what works, and are you comfortable with a narrower crop portfolio?
Yeah, it's like, what's the point? It's some
Yeah.
scale, because it's
Yep.
just it's additional thing to just take up mental load.
Yep.
If it doesn't move the needle, 30 bags, right? If you sold all 30 bags, I mean, do you even care? Really, at the end of the day, to be honest? I mean, you obviously want to sell them, but is it going to make any difference in the farm to sell 30 bags of spinach?
Not financially, but if I sold 30 in the morning,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
but
Right.
at the new supermarket we're at, New World, we started deep winter, and we've only got a single fridge. We would love a double, but retail space is still a premium in the supermarket, and we had a good feeling about it. It's a slightly higher socio, the customer base there. Our fridge, we're 8 months in, hammered from day one. The fridge is cleaned out every 36 hours. And this is so that currently this is a good place for us to test the market with crops. Yeah. Like, what would spinach be like in this supermarket? So yeah, shopping patterns, interesting one.
Yeah, testing the market, I think, is one thing. And then it's like long term, you got to make a decision what happens. And I've had to do that. I look at a lot of our SKUs constantly of stuff we sell and decide, is this worth it? Because there's always some sort of cost of keeping it around. And we sell by far the most of anything we sell. It's like stuff like chain pots. So I can sell a lot of chain pots, or I can monkey around and sell a little bit of some ABC widget. There has to be really at this stage where I'm at, I look at stuff like I really have to believe in ABC widget to take it on. Otherwise, what's the point? Selling a few, it doesn't move the needle, and it only introduces potential complexity and challenges and problems. And that's just not worth it. If you're not getting the return, it's not worth it. I see some of these other tool companies out there, and it's like nonstop tools being created. And at some point, it's like, oh my God, like that's hard to manage. And maybe it works in their context. It wouldn't work in mine, because it's just every additional thing has a huge load on it. And I think the same is, I know it's the same for farms. Every crop is going to carry upside, and that upside has baggage. And you got to decide, is the upside outweigh the baggage? And if you're not selling a lot, what's the point? So like dill, if you weren't selling much dill, you could just say, hey, like, is anybody going to notice if this is gone?
Yeah.
And if not, then it's gone. It's like, hey, I don't have to buy the seed. I don't have to store the seed. It's not an SOP. There's no more training on it. Nobody mixes it up with something else. We can use that bed for something else and try and sell more salad. And that gets onto many future episodes of the Urban Farmer of, 80/20ing it down. But it's an important step that a lot of businesses, I think, need to look at and don't do. Of here's everything I offer to sell, a SKU, right? A stock keeping unit, an individual thing. What are the best things? What are the worst things? And you look at the bottom of the list periodically and say, do I really need to keep the stuff at the bottom? And if you don't, get rid of it. Why might you keep it even if it's not performing? Like maybe it's a complementary product. Like you said, like, hey, if you're selling to a fish market, they might just want dill. So that's a nice thing. If you sold a lot of tomatoes, like say in San Diego, you probably want to have cilantro and jalapenos with it, because people are going to make salsa. So you might not make bank on jalapenos, but that gets people buying more tomatoes. Same thing with, you sell tomatoes, you can have some basil, those types of things. So there's this kind of pseudo pairing, you can justify it, but there's just some odd thing like pie pumpkins that I'm growing and I'm not moving them, and they don't even fit in with anything else. It's like, gone. See you. But I love retiring stuff and saying, hey, this is not coming back, or I'm never buying this again. Because to me, it's just, I almost celebrate it as a stress relief. Great. I
Yeah.
never have to think about that ever again. I'm never committing money to that again. Doesn't take up space in my warehouse anymore. Moving on. And it's liberating to say that we're going to focus on what we do and just do it better. And I think for me and how I think and how I try and get people who work for me to think is like, let's do less things better. So we're just going to focus on getting better at what we do, not just doing more stuff and maybe letting quality or other
Yeah.
things slip and slide.
Yep. Same here. And then if you look at our mixed salad, which only started when we lost during that storm and we lost all our lettuce under cover, we probably wouldn't have the microgreen sales that we do have if we hadn't incorporated them in the field salad. Then people got to know them. And then when we put them out also as a single item, people already knew them.
Yeah.
If we went back, so, Curtis's advice is start with the fastest crops and work out, which I think if you're small scale is just gold nugget, great advice. We didn't start with micros in the first year, but we knew we were going to, and then it took us a while to, start getting more efficient with them, increasing the yields. Now, for a quarter of our customers, that's their preferred salad. Straight microgreens, and then the other 3/4 sales is the mix.
Well, the good thing with your micros is it's also optionality, which I think is important with crops, because if you can't sell a microgreen crop a la carte by itself in a clamshell, you dump it into your salad mix, and you can sell salad mix. Not a problem there. So that's another way of viewing these crops of, does it give me some sort of bundle ability, optionality to offload it a second way. So now really if you grow radish microgreens, you have two ways to potentially sell that, by itself or as part of a salad mix. And you could even go further and maybe make a braising mix or something like that, like could move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a nonstop evolution of things. And I mean, for as long as you've been doing this, do you feel like, you always say you're still learning, but do you feel like you've mastered this?
We just did a podcast with JM. I just attended a canopy training program. I thought it was awesome, and I had the same conversation. I said to JM, I'm getting good at salad, I'll say that, but that's I said there's no such thing as a master gardener, and then releases the podcast as Master Gardener Jodi Roebuck. For me, the mastery is in not the field stuff. Yeah, there's a lot involved. John Chapin says being a food producer is one of the most skilled things you could ever do. Yeah, I agree. I think it's the creative side. I love it. I don't know where optionality came from, if Curtis conceived of it, but he definitely popularized. That's what makes me roll, those decision makings. And so a couple of comments. I've been told a few times, James said this, Jodi's one of the hardest workers I've ever met. And, I'm 52, 33 years farming. My body and health is great, better than ever. Nobody said Jodi's one of the smartest workers I've met. I don't lift nothing. I don't work hard. It's fast crops, fast decision making. We're constantly harvesting and delivering. I can see. I'd like to be like Elliot Coleman, 80, still farming. He was, I worked there in 2018. He's the first one out of bed in the morning doing field prepping beds. He'd finished at 11 once the sun was up. That was his retirement. And I think I'm probably jumping ships here, another conversation, but all of this flexibility, knowing the value that you bring to the places you supply, we are price and T&C setters. We don't work with anyone that sets price and terms and conditions for us. That's what makes our business fun.
Yeah, that'll actually tie into the next episode that you and I will talk about. So
Right.
a lot there. I mean, hey, if you want to farm till you're 80, keep your body healthy, keep your business bank account healthy, and you have a good chance of making it there. And realize you make mistakes. For as long as you've been doing this, as long as I have, we still both screw up. We still make mistakes. We're learning something every day. So never think you figured it out, because once you have, life will drop the one thing you can't figure out on you. So yeah, good on, man. Thanks, Jodi.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Diego. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Urban Farmer Rewind. If you're a farmer and you'd like to join me as a guest for a future episode of the Rewind, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to have you on and talk shop. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.